Hey, what's up, guys? This is Chris with the Gray Party, and this is Hoodie Up Rant number 2. It's going to be a retrospective on the Kyrie Irving Hebrews to Negroes controversy from about 15 months ago. And if you don't know Kyrie Irving, he's an NBA player, currently plays for the Mavs, all-star caliber player, really talented dude. But at the time, he played for the Brooklyn Nets at the time of this controversy. And what started out is that he posted a link to the Hebrews to Negroes documentary, which I believe was on Amazon Prime, maybe one of the streaming services. And basically, this documentary was about. It was kind of like a spinoff of the Black Israelite sort of theory, which is, if you're not familiar with that, it's basically that the chosen ones, the Hebrews, the ones in the like Old Testament that God spoke to directly in Genesis, and they eventually ended up in Egypt, and getting freed by Moses in the Book of Exodus. The theory is that those Hebrews were actually like the black race, the race that ended up in sub-Saharan Africa, and that at some point like the identities were switched to what most people consider to be Jewish people today, which is like the Ashkenazi Jews from Europe, and there's a couple other segments of Jewish people, the Sephardim and the Mizrahis, but that's the sort of the theory. I won't really get into the validity of that theory. Like I'm not going to talk about that. But what I will talk about is this kind of like dynamic, which I referred to previously in this channel, but it's the idea of like finding internet content that you get stimulated by, and it gives you this sort of like feeling that, oh, I just learned something new, or in this case with Kyrie is probably like, oh, I know something that other people don't know, and it gets you sort of excited about it. And Kyrie has shown in the past that he's susceptible to this kind of thing. Back in, like, I think it was 2018, he had mentioned on a podcast that he believed that the Earth was flat. Then later ended up sort of retracting it and taking it back. So we know that he's the kind of guy who can like find some stuff and go down a rabbit hole on the internet and come away with this feeling of sort of being enlightened by it, especially in sort of a counterculture kind of bent. So I think that's probably what happened. I mean, the actual backlash to it is a pretty big story in sports. He ended up being accused of having anti-Semitic beliefs because the documentary definitely had some anti-Semitic sort of tones. I mean, I think I haven't really watched it, and I probably will never watch it. But it ended up playing out in this like really serious way. And there's this one clip where these reporters are like directly asking them, Kyrie, do you have any anti-Semitic beliefs? And it's this big thing, and I believe he was suspended if I remember correctly. And you just have to think like, just think about it. Like he ended up, this is an NBA player, he ended up watching this video and sort of getting stimulated by it, and that becomes a news story because as much as I talk about the internet being like what kind of that kind of rabbit hole that you can go down and sort of like end up being stimulating yourself constantly on it and spending a lot of time, and that's kind of the point of it. It's like the way that the technology works. The other thing about the internet is it's like a public record. So whatever you do on the internet, it's recorded somewhere. Um, whether it's like your texts, like if you ever see like a court case where they bring up the evidence and it's like the person's text history. Well, I got news for you. Like whatever you've texted randomly on a whim is on a record somewhere as well. But it's especially true about things that you post. Like Kyrie posted this, and that becomes like a big, massive public record. Like you can look at the history of his like X or Twitter account, and it's going to be a public record of things that he endorses. It's going to include this Hebrews to Negroes documentary. But I think we just have to. I don't know if we've really embraced like just the fact that like when you surf on the internet and you encounter these kind of things, it's it's somewhere between like reality and like you just like churning around in your mind. Like I heard someone describe it recently as like dreaming. Like when you surf the web, it's almost like dreaming because you kind of go from place to place and it takes you where it wants to take you. But yet there's a public record that's created by that, and people can sort of analyze it and inspect it. It's almost like being able to view someone's thoughts in a way. But what happens when you take it seriously in that way? Like think about like these reporters sitting there and asking him like, "Hey, do you hold any anti-Semitic beliefs?" You're basically turning like some guys surfing on the internet and having this momentary kind of experience with it into a serious thing and into being something that's a lot bigger than it is. And here in 2024, think about like how much of a problem like actual anti-Semitism is, and it just shows you how laughable it is that we are sitting there acting like this guy surfing on the internet and promoting this like conspiracy documentary was like a serious thing that people needed to talk about, like a public conversation we needed to have. It's completely absurd. And if you similar to the whole flat earth thing where Kyrie apologized later, like if you I'd be interested to ask, like, if you interviewed him now and you said, "Hey, do you believe in this like Black Israelite sort of movement?" He might not even he might have moved on from that because that's the way this shit works. It's like you watch a video or like a podcast or something, and it's like in the moment it blows your mind because it's just stimulating your kind of your sort of centers to make you feel like you've learned something. But it's basically in one ear out the other, and why is this important? Why do I have my hoodie up? Because the the dirty sort of secret, and I work in local media as I've mentioned, is that when these sort of news items, when these sort of viral events happen, they generate like views and interactions. My company doesn't really have like comments on their platform on the app, but just like views and shares. And I can tell you, we get excited about it. I'm in Philly, so when the when that one guy escaped from prison in Chester County, Cavalcante was his name. We got like boosted on Apple News. We got like a ton of page views, and I was in meetings where we talked about it, and we were kind of like excited about it. We were like, "Yeah, man, the escaped prisoner is really working well for us." And similarly, there was kind of like a crisis with the bottled water being contaminated less than a year ago. I think it was over the summer. I could be wrong about that. But that was like a crazy news story, and we got a ton of traction on that too. I think it like broke our servers like that that story, and we were jazzed about it. We were excited. It meant like views. It meant advertising revenue coming in. Sometimes it meant like subscribers. But the difference between those two stories, like Cavalcante and the water crisis, is they were actually things that people needed to know. Like the whole the whole controversy about Kyrie and the anti-Semitism, it generated a ton of like likes and comments and shares for people, but it was basically unimportant. Like that just wasn't like it wasn't an important story. Like it was useless and to be something that we're completely focused on. And it just goes to show you that like paying so much attention to these stuff on the internet, like it skews your reality on like what is actually important. It's 2020. The biggest thing we were talking about was like racism and how it's like one of the biggest problems in America. And I remember like some people sort of hinting that like they were afraid, like certain black people were like afraid to like be around policemen or afraid to like go outside because they might get like hurt by policemen. They were just spending too much time on the internet. Like I'm sorry, there's no reality. I know I'm light skinned, but there's no reality where black people like have to go outside and be afraid of being like assaulted or killed by a policeman. It's just there's a ton of content on the internet, and like a lot of people engage with things that are about like racism or just hot button sort of topics, but it's not the same as that being actually like the reality you face. It's one of the many ways that the spending a lot of time on the internet just like skews your reality. Another good one is like dating. Like look at, I'm male, so like when I used to go on Instagram, like so much of the suggested content was like sort of like edited pictures of like young women, like 20 mid 20s women, uh, scantily clad, uh, sort of suggestive poses. And if you like look at that enough, you start to think like that's what like a woman looks like, and it skews your reality. And a lot of like men are just sort of holding out for like whatever that is instead of like an actual woman. It's kind of ridiculous. It's it plays on our fear of like commitment too a little bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, it skews your reality politically, like in this sort of like dating realm as well. So I guess the takeaway, I guess, is just like if you spend a lot of time on the internet, just make sure you also have some like grounding experiences to like keep one foot in reality. Spend some time with community. I mention on this channel a lot that I'm a part of the Mummers, and that's a huge grounding influence for me, especially since a lot of those guys are like married or in serious relationships and have kids, and they keep me out of like this kind of like weird faux reality that's presented to you online if you spend a lot of time there. That's it for me. A little mild of a hoodie up rant this time, but as always, keep it gray. I've been doing a better job of that lately, and it it really does help to make your phone like less appealing if you put it in a grayscale mode. And when you end up like popping back into the color mode, like to map yourself around somewhere, you really notice like how vivid that color is, and how much that is sort of one of the like subconscious sort of appeals to making you want to like stare at your phone. Is that. So that's it for me. Peace.